My name is Marlene. I sat in my car, parked in my very own driveway, looking at the house I'd worked so hard for. The cream-colored siding glowed softly under the front porch light that I'd left on before I'd left for that fateful dinner. It was as if that light was a beacon of my new-found independence, a symbol of all I'd achieved. I remember the drive home that night. It was the quietest of my life. No radio blaring, no phone calls. Just the sound of the road beneath my tires and the gentle movements of my baby girl inside me. She seemed to sense that we were on our way to a safe haven, a place that truly belonged to us. Let me rewind. It all started with 11 years of toil. I was from a working-class family in a small town. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, were simple but traditional people. My father was a strict man who always believed in the family unit above all else, sometimes to a fault. My mother was more emotional, but she often went along with my father's decisions. I had an older sister named Vivian. She was 2 years my senior and always the more carefree one. She'd married young, then divorced, and now she was with a new guy named Leo. Leo was a smooth-talking charmer, but I'd always had my doubts about him. I spent those 11 years working double shifts at a local factory. I skipped vacations, lived in shabby apartments with faulty heating systems, and treated my savings account like a sacred temple. Every penny I saved was a step closer to my dream, a house for me and my unborn child. When my savings finally hit $95,000, I didn't throw a party. I sat at my kitchen table, alone, and cried quietly. I knew what that money meant. It meant an end to the uncertainty of renting, no more landlords giving me 30-day notices. It meant that my baby, who was already kicking so hard at 7 months that she kept me up at night, would have a stable home. I'd already found the perfect house. It was a 3-bedroom in a lovely, quiet neighborhood with a great school district. The backyard had an ancient maple tree that I could already picture my child climbing when she grew up. The sellers had accepted my offer, and the paperwork was in progress. I hadn't told my family about the house in full detail. I'd just mentioned that I was buying a place and getting settled before the baby arrived. I naively thought they'd be proud of me, but boy was I wrong. One evening, my mother called and said she was organizing a family dinner. She called it a family meeting, which should have been my first red flag. When I arrived at my parents' house, everyone was there, my parents, Vivian, her boyfriend Leo, and my great-uncle Henry, an old family man who always thought he had the final say in family matters. The table was set beautifully, and my mother had made a delicious roast chicken. The atmosphere was warm and familiar, and I let my guard down. I was lulled into a false sense of security, which is exactly what they wanted. My father started speaking. He had this way of delivering bad news in a calm, detached voice, as if he were reading from a script. He told me that Vivian was in a tight financial spot. She'd made some impulsive decisions with Leo, and now they were on the verge of losing their apartment. He then went on about how family supports family and that we should all stand together in tough times. I nodded, still not quite grasping where this was going. Then, he dropped the bombshell. He said that all of them, my father, mother, and great-uncle Henry, had agreed that my down payment money should go to Vivian and Leo. They wanted to help them get a new place, give them a fresh start. For a moment, I was frozen. I sat there with my hands on my belly, feeling my daughter move inside me, and I thought I'd misheard him. I asked him to repeat it, and he did, in that same calm, emotionless voice. It was as if the decision had been made without my input, as if I was just there to be informed. Vivian wouldn't look at me. She was busy twirling her fork around on her plate. Leo leaned back in his chair, looking relaxed, as if he had nothing to lose in this conversation. My mother kept her eyes down, and great-uncle Henry nodded slowly, as if he'd blessed this unfair arrangement from the start. Once upon a time, I would have broken down and cried. 5 years ago, I'd have pleaded with them, trying to make them see reason. But something had changed in me during those 11 years of hard work and self-reliance. I'd developed a newfound strength. I didn't raise my voice. I simply put down my fork and looked my father straight in the eye. "Fine," I said, "on one condition." The table fell silent. My mother looked up in surprise, and even Leo sat forward a bit. I'm sure they expected me to negotiate a small concession, like a repayment plan or keeping a portion of the money. But they were completely unprepared for what I said next. "Before any of you touch a single dollar of that money," I told them, "you need to know something I haven't told you." I paused long enough to make the silence unbearable. I don't have a down payment anymore. I used it 6 weeks ago. The house was closed on the 14th, and it's in my name. I've been a homeowner for over a month. Suddenly, the room went completely still. My father's eyes widened, and my mother slowly put down her knife. Vivian finally looked at me, and the look on her face was one of shock and recalculation. The smiles that had been on their faces disappeared. Leo cleared his throat nervously, and Great Uncle Henry shifted in his chair. My father stammered, trying to find the words. He asked me why I hadn't told them. I said I'd been waiting for the right moment, but the truth was, deep down, I'd always known I needed to protect myself from them. Vivian said my name in a sharp, low voice. I looked at her, this sister who had left behind her responsibilities, burned through her savings in a year, and now expected to take the fruits of my labor. And in that moment, I felt neither angry nor satisfied. I just felt incredibly tired, but also clear-headed. I realized that I no longer had to be a doormat for my family. I pushed back my chair, picked up my bag, and stood up. I was 7 months pregnant, wearing a purple maternity dress, and I had a mortgage in my name. There was nothing they could take from me now. "I'm going home," I said firmly and walked out. That night, as I sat in my car in the driveway, my phone started ringing. First, it was my mother. Her voice was soft and apologetic, saying there'd been a misunderstanding, that my father had worded things badly. She claimed they'd just been brainstorming solutions for Vivian. The word brainstorming felt like a punch in the gut. They'd presented a united front at a formal dinner, and now they called it brainstorming? My father's message was short and to the point. He said I'd embarrassed the family by walking out and that I was being too dramatic. I deleted his message before it even finished. Great Uncle Henry called from a number I didn't recognize, but he didn't leave a message. Vivian texted me, just 4 words, "You could have helped." I read the text twice, then put my phone face down on the coffee table and finished my chamomile tea. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched as things fell apart for Vivian. It turned out that she'd promised Leo the money was coming, and Leo had told the leasing office of the apartment they wanted that they'd have the funds by the end of the month. When the money didn't materialize, Leo disappeared. He just stopped answering Vivian's calls and was seen with another woman 2 weeks later. My mother called to tell me about it, and I could tell she hoped I'd feel sorry for Vivian. But I just couldn't muster up any real sympathy. One Saturday morning, my parents showed up at my house without calling. I saw my father's car from the upstairs window and took a deep breath before going to open the door. My mother had brought a basket of fresh bread and a box of chocolates, a sure sign that they wanted something. I let them in because they were my parents, and I'd been raised to respect them. But as I stood in my own kitchen, I felt a new sense of empowerment. My father started with an apology that was more of an excuse. He talked about how hard times were for Vivian and that they hadn't meant to corner me. He said the family needed to stay together, especially with a new baby on the way, and that holding grudges wasn't healthy. But he never once admitted that they were wrong. I noticed my mother looking around my house with an unreadable expression, a mix of admiration and envy that made me uncomfortable. I looked them in the eye and said, without anger, that I loved them and that I wanted a relationship with them and for my daughter to know her grandparents. But I also told them that what had happened at that dinner had shown me that my finances, my property, and my decisions were my own. There would be no more family meetings where my assets were discussed without my consent. My mother started to cry, and my father stared at the floor. I handed my mother a tissue and waited for them to leave. When they finally did, my mother hugged me tightly and whispered that she was proud of me. I think she meant it, but I also think she was a little afraid of me. After all, people are often afraid of those they've underestimated. 3 months later, I gave birth to my daughter at the hospital just a few blocks from my house. I named her Lily. I brought her home to the bedroom I'd painted a soft pink with the white curtains I'd hung myself. It was a place where I was in control, a place where my family could no longer make decisions about my life. Vivian sent a gift, a little pink onesie with a bunny on the front. There was no card, no note. I dressed Lily in it once, took a photo, and put it in a memory box. Someday, she'll want to know her story, the struggles, the victories, and the strong-willed mother who fought for what was hers. One Tuesday afternoon, my parents came to meet Lily. My father held her as if she were the most precious thing in the world, clearing his throat every few minutes. My mother sat beside me on the couch, watching Lily sleep. After a long time, she said softly, "You did good, Marlene." And looking at my beautiful daughter and my lovely home, I replied, "I know."